mean, I think of two things when you say that. One is what you were saying just a few minutes ago about when people minimize their trauma. When people will say, "Oh, this shouldn't be such a big deal because so and
Oh,
so is going through so much more,"
completely.
and that's
Yeah.
just we do that to ourselves all the time, when we have to honor what we're going through and give it the attention that it needs, because we can't minimize it. That's is doing ourselves
You
and the people
mustn't.
around us such a huge disservice. But also,
Absolutely.
to what you just said, you could have two people who have been through the exact same experience.
Yeah.
And I'll use myself again, for example. It's that you take my sister and I, who are very, very different people, who, her being 7 years older than me, we both lost our brother young, which affected us hugely. And then we both lost our mother a few
Trauma.
years later.
That's trauma. That's
And
trauma.
huge trauma. However, we're so different
Yeah.
that the way to talk to me about it would have been very different with how to talk to her. Even the way that we talk to each other, it took us years to be able to understand each other because of the age difference and where we were, just the sibling order. And so even if you know somebody who's going through something, maybe something that you went through and it was really not a big deal for you, but they seem to be struggling,
Mm.
there's a lot of other factors that we can't underestimate what somebody's feeling, because also we don't know this. You may have a lot more support around you than that person does, or just coping skills that that person doesn't have. And so we don't want to diminish our own pain, but also diminish somebody
Abs-
else's pain. And I
Absolutely.
think that we don't even know, like I said to you, I know where my eating disorder started. I know where my trauma started was when I was 17 and my brother passed away. I've said, anyone who knows me for 5 minutes knows my life has never been the same
Yeah.
since that moment. And
Yeah.
then losing my mother when I was pregnant 10 years later. And you describe a parent as a lighthouse. And it's funny you said that, because I always say my mother was my home. She was my safe place to come home to.
God, that's
And I was,
it.
yeah. So I always say my brother was the invisible armor I wore out in the world to protect me. And my
Yeah.
mother was my safe place to come home to. So by 28, I had lost my armor and my home. And it absolutely impacted me. But I think even me knowing that, I tell you it's obvious, but I think still it's taken me 50 something years
Yeah.
to still kind of understand the impact.
Well, it really is never a criticism of parents. That's never what we're doing. Before you criticize, we criticize parents for not being a good enough light out or whatever it is. Always look at the parents that parented them. Like in the relay race, really, I see a metaphorical baton. There's a script, there's a family script, and don't look at parents, look at great great grandparents. And I often
Mm.
see, look, there's a script that gets passed on down, and ultimately what you become, what we become is, look, I'm going to be the dam. This has got to stop. This is not going to go past me, because we know it gets passed on to the next generation.
Mhm.
And the best gift you can give to the next generation, the children, is not to pass on some of the stuff to them. But you're not just working on your own stuff. What you must remember, in my view, is it's all the generations from back here. You say it stops with.
So when it comes to love addiction, let's
Mm,
say, I was saying at the beginning in my intro, I feel like I know a lot of people who seem, I would think, from a layman's perspective, that they seem to be addicted to, again, just needing to be with somebody, that
yeah,
they feel like they are not complete if they
yeah,
aren't with somebody.
without
If they don't
somebody.
have somebody who is making them feel, like you said, wanted and validated,
Yeah,
that I would think that there are people who would even revolve their choices in life, even as far as maybe finding a career where they think it would be easier to meet people that they might
it's
marry, or their hobbies. Everything they do in life
and
revolves
further than
around,
that. Absolutely, and even
really.
more than that. Absolutely, because I've got to. And the
So how
answer,
do you, well, let me, sorry, just because I'm
yeah,
thinking,
go on, go on,
I
go on.
did it's, so what's the difference between, this is what I'm saying, with sex addiction, it almost seems like it's easier to sort of almost visualize, but with love addiction or something like this, it seems like it would be very easy to confuse it with, oh, just a romantic. I'm just a hopeless romantic, which makes it seem really pretty.
Yeah,
But there's got to be that, like I
yeah.
said, that difference between when does pleasure become a problem.
Yeah, there's a deficit. There's likely to be a deficit. We won't put everybody in that box, but where you
Hmm.
see that what has become really quite compulsive, I need to have, my antenna will go up and I'll be thinking, there's a deficit. And that for me immediately really starts to question, there's an attachment void. Something happened back there. And it's not always obvious, Marcy. I often give the example of the minister who the congregation and is there for the congregation, tries to give as much time to little Johnny playing cars on the carpet and football. But as soon as the phone rings, little Johnny hears the phone ring and, sorry, son, I've got to go. Somebody needs me in the parish and such. And yeah, that's okay, Dad, I understand that. So a perfect, beautiful family upbringing. But, X years later, this little boy has got attachment issues. And you look and say, but how? Why? Perfect family, beautiful family. He gave allowance for it was Dad's job necessary to go, but actually it said, you are not as important as
Jeez.
no matter
Oh,
how he logically put it, he knew. And so X years later, there's all sorts of stuff that comes. So I went to the Action Man, for example, and why is it? What's using my toothbrush and not putting it back got to do with an Action Man when you were 6? It's got everything to do with it. Now I become possessive of my stuff.
oh my gosh. Oh my God. That's a
And that
lot.
toothbrush that you kept borrowing and you didn't put it back. I don't mind you taking it, but put it back. Put it back. Why are you getting so angry and so upset? I don't know.
But
That's
Gary, the longer we live, the longer, the more of these experiences that we have. I mean, it also seems kind of like, that that little boy with the father, like he seemed like he did the right thing. He couldn't not help his
absolutely.
parishioner. So there was nothing wrong. So then how do we what do we do? How do you keep that from happening? Or once you
You you
know it,
you
how do
you
you,
you almost can't, Marcy, because you don't know how that little boy's brain's gonna receive
right,
that, because his twin brother didn't.
right.
So it's not a criticism of a dad. He
No,
did
but
the
what do you
best.
do? What do we do? Life and like, what do we,
I've got the
you
answer
can't
to that one,
win.
Marcy. Because you try to do the best that you can do as a parent. Who can
But
be
even after
critical?
that, forget the parent part because yeah, he did the right thing. But so then 20 years later, little Johnny's in a relationship and something is happening there and nothing's happened, but there's these old feelings are coming through.
Yeah.
How do you deal with that? How does he deal with that? How does this partner deal with that? To me, it seems like there's so much stuff in our brains and in our past
No,
and in our
yeah.
bones. Like, how do we have relationships with other
That's
people with
so
all of this
tough,
going on?
Marcy. That's so tough because how's that man now in relation gonna put it back to when he was young and the
Right.
flow? I mean, he's not. It's just, and it's when I guess you come into therapy and you do a sort of a
Uh,
history thing, but sometimes we'll never find it.